Great morning, everyone. Today, actually, good afternoon, my side. It's me, Lucia Gabriela. We're here at Lucia Gabriela TV, pretty much on Facebook now. And today we have an amazing, incredible mentor. He is Michael Other, and he is an empowerment coach for men, and he collaborates with Destin Garrick and Evolve Masculine. So let me just introduce you Michael with us today. Let me just, here we go. There he is. Say hello.
Hi. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. First of all, I want to really thank you for saying yes to these kind of like conversations that we're having about like what actually sexual healing is and what is not. Like literally trying to have a clear understanding for so many of our viewers and in the community. And what I really appreciate about you, Michael, is that you have been a very active voice in this community about sharing some great insight when it comes to this topic and conversation to keep the integrity of the work that we do. And I really appreciate that. And all your perspective coming from being a man and a male perspective and having, working with men as a coach is really important and powerful to me. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So we're going to start with the first question. So the first question is, what is sexual healing?
That's quite a question, right? I think the what is not sexual healing is a much easier question to answer. So what is sexual healing? I mean, I view sexual healing as the same as any other type of healing, which is basically it's space holding, right? It's allowing things to come up, to be witnessed and cleared. So if you're talking about normal healing, we often say, that the job of the healer is to hold a container for an individual to express and for things to come up and for new awarenesses to be arrived at. So with sexual healing, I think it's exactly the same. It's just that the healer is skilled and knowledgeable in the area of sexuality, so that they've addressed a lot of their own triggers. They've done a lot of the work on themselves with regard to their sexuality. They've cleared a lot of their past belief systems and a lot of their triggers surrounding it, and they hold a container for an individual to do the same. So sexual healing is simply space holding for the expression of fear, guilt, shame, all those sorts of things surrounding sexuality for another person. Beautiful. That's how I would define it.
Beautiful. And also, I would like to invite everyone who is joining us today that if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. But we're going to have a specific question that we're asking to everyone who we are having conversations about this topic. And also that everyone who is actually sharing from their perspective and their life experience. So it's so beautiful to have a compilation of so many great people that have a voice in this community and sharing great insight. So now, what is not sexual healing?
So what is not sexual healing? I would say that sexual healing is not some people have this idea that sexual healing involves ipso facto touching someone's genitals and giving them pleasure. I would say that is not in and of itself sexual healing, and it's a large misconception. And I know before I ever entered these communities, I had this idea what sexual healing? I'm gonna pay you, and you're gonna touch my penis, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna be healed. Like, what is this? You're just trying to get your needs met. And so that's not sexual healing. It's not necessarily a yoni massage, so that could be sexual healing. It's not necessarily a lingam massage. It's not necessarily a tantric massage. It's not necessarily anything. There is no one action that could be considered sexual healing or not sexual healing. It's all in the intention and the space that is held, which provides the healing, not the action itself. So I could put my hands on somebody in a particular way, and in some contexts it would be healing, and in some contexts it would be violation, right? So what is not sexual healing is one of those things that I can't say before I see it, whether it is or is not. So, yeah, that's my answer. I don't know if it helps.
Well, but pretty much what I'm thinking here from your perspective is that if the sexual healing is like holding that container, and like when you actually are holding a container to fulfill your own need and meet your own needs and desires and pleasure, that's not actually considered sexual healing, from what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like it's about holding the container in integrity for that person who is there, trusting you and help them to be there for themselves, and we just holding container, right?
I would agree with that. Yeah. So sexual healing is definitely not sexuality that is engaged with for the purpose of both parties getting their sexual needs met. That is not sexual healing.
Yes, indeed. That's a great point. We're gonna continue with this. So, how do you know sexual healing is for you?
Well, that's a difficult question. You know it's for you if you, one, are somewhat educated about what it is and is not. So you can choose it from a place of empowered choice. So I know what it is. I know what I'm getting myself into. And furthermore, you feel that it would be valuable for you, that perhaps you've had some past trauma that has been unhealed, either from childhood or later in life, and you found that it has impacted your ability to show up sexually with people that you love and care about. Maybe you experience full body trauma reactions, you freeze, you find yourself unable to trust, you find yourself unable to orgasm perhaps, you find that you carry shame or fear or feelings of inadequacy surrounding your sexuality.
How about for men, like the issues that they have with erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation and issues like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are many ways of addressing these things, but if you're a man and you do experience those things, such as ejaculating before you choose to ejaculate, or if you find yourself unable to reach a state of arousal, or in some way your arousal system feels like it could use some work to bring it into a place that feels good to you and your partner, then I would say that some form of sexual healing is probably would probably be beneficial.
Yeah, awesome. So, I know where we're going with questions, but these have been questions that everybody always asks, and I've been like reading a lot and comments and everything, and it's like it's always grab it, right? So I have the compilation of question here. So
sure.
You share with us how do you know how the sexual healing is for you? So now how do you know it is not for you?
Well, number one, you don't want it. If you're mistrustful and you think that people are just out to get you, and you're coming from that place of fear, then it's absolutely not for you, at least not right now. That is the number one thing. The number two thing I would say is choose your sexual healing modality very carefully. That if you're somebody that carries a lot of fear, mistrust, strong triggers surrounding your sexuality, I would not suggest going to a hands-on sexual healer first. That's a recipe for disaster. Because you're going to bring this fear and these incredibly strong triggers to the situation. And it may be a while before you're actually ready for a hands-on sexual healing experience. So there are many forms of sexual healing that do not take the form of any kind of physical touch. So I would suggest engaging with sexual healing from a place of self-cultivation and belief system restructuring, getting yourself familiar with the world of conscious sexuality, and perhaps if you ever feel ready, then go for the hands-on work.
Yeah, so amazing, because you're actually leading us to the next question, which is that you're explaining a lot of it already, but if we can go deeper in this one, which are there levels of stages of sexual healing?
So that's a difficult question. I tend to be a non-hierarchical thinker. So the idea of like there being this level and then this level and this level, and when you reach this level, you're way more advanced, right? That for me, I tore my hair out when I was a kid and I was in Boy Scouts because my parents wanted me to care about advancing up to Eagle Scout, and I frankly couldn't care less. Similarly in university, I mean, I got good grades, but I was very rarely motivated by the grades. So this idea of a hierarchy and levels of healing is challenging for me. However, I would say that in your own personal development, you will recognize that, you know, it's a process. Life is a journey. Life is a path, and your healing will also take a certain path. So you may be ready for some things at certain times and not ready for others, and that's perfectly okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are more healed at one point or another, but I would say that it definitely means that you have reached a level of comfort with your own self and your own sexuality when you're ready to step into other things. So I would say that jumping right into a Red Tantra event and going to a bunch of play parties when you are first encountering the world of sexual healing and conscious sexuality, I wouldn't say it's a wrong choice, but I would say that it's certainly going to bring up a lot right at the beginning when perhaps you don't have the spaciousness to deal with that. And, you know, like you could actually be quite impacted and be put out of commission for weeks. Yeah, there's definitely the stuff that's for beginners and stuff that's for people who've done it for a while. One of my favorite initiatory rites, so to speak, is what Tantra people call a puja. If I do them, I don't call it that word, but like white Tantra, or just being in connection with another, eye-gazing acts of adoration, worship, and devotion. Those are things that feel good to everybody, from the first timer to the person who's been in the world for a long time.
Yes, I totally resonate with you. Like going straight to events or activities that actually is gonna open up all these this pot of emotions, and it can be very, maybe that's your path that you choose, but it's very fiery. It's like it's not like actually walking on cold, you know, like on hot stone. It's actually walking on lava. So
yeah, that's what I did. I jumped in the deep end, just right off the bat. I don't necessarily recommend it.
Yeah, me too. Like I do the same thing. Like I go right on it, and I can say that sometimes I do get burned. So, yeah. So if you want to get burned, that may be your way. But definitely two of us telling you that maybe there's another way. So that leads us to the next question, which is genital work a part of sexual healing? If yes, at what stage of the process, beginning or advanced stages?
I would say that's a very good question. It can be a part of the process, and it is a part of the process for many people. It does not need to be a part of your process. But if you feel called to engage in it, then by all means, it is a valid expression of your own sexual journey. I would say that sexual healing and genital work doesn't always need to be done in a professional container. either. That if you are somebody who wants to embark on this path and you're not certain, like, I don't know if I want to pay somebody to touch me, right? Like, there are educational workshops that you can go to that will help you do a lot of this work at home with your partner or with whomever, really. If you follow the orgasmic meditation path, it can be with hundreds of partners at one event. So there's all sorts of different ways to engage with it. I would say that it can be a part of sexual healing. I would recommend it for people who've been in the field for a bit before engaging with that. So you're not. It can be very triggering for people who have not familiarized themselves with the work.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because especially for our audience who are watching, if they don't know about orgasmic meditation, it's what we call OM, orgasmic meditation. You can always Google it. I forgot the name of the founder. I think her name is Nicole.
Nicole Didon, yeah.
Yes, and it's a kind of like interesting, activities and process and community and all that stuff. You can always check it out, but it's really important, like Michael's saying, that the work, I'm all about preparation and, preparing yourself with your emotions, like Michael has shared before, that it's important for you to really see what's actually triggering you, what's happening. It's really important to start mastering some kind of like tools, right? Like Michael is empowerment coach with men, and he worked with Dustin, who say hello, great interviews. Hi Dustin, thank you for joining us. And they actually, many of us coaches really help our clients to prepare the mindset, like Michael was talking about before, like the rewiring, the things that need to be done before we even go to experience. We're actually going to create more triggers. So really, really important point. So now here we go with the other question that it may be very triggering to some people, which is,
sure.
Is having sex with a client considered sexual healing? We call about a sacred prostitute. If yes, should be offered at the beginning of the journey or at the end, or middle, advanced levels. Again, levels. I like levels.
Yeah. I love this question. Yes, absolutely, that can be healing. And whether people consider it sexual healing or not very much depends on the person. There are some people who say, no, absolutely not. Prostitutes are not sexual healers, and those are people who are very much embedded in the sexual healing community and want to differentiate themselves from sex workers, which is totally understandable. But on the other hand, I have experience in this world from. I've had intimate partners who are sex workers, and I can say that in some cases, what they do is very much sexual healing, because there are all of these people out there who utilize prostitutes to get their sexual needs met, and oftentimes these people have no idea how to engage in deep intimacy, and so they go like to these women, oftentimes women, it can be men, and they're looking for something. They're looking to get their cup filled, so to speak. And oftentimes they don't see these women as people, as individuals. They're just bodies. And so these women will oftentimes take it upon themselves to do emotional labor along with the physical touching of a man or engagement with them. And it very much depends on the level of consciousness and the intention of the sex worker, whether they do that healing work or whether they're intentionally just there, I'm just going to get them off and get my money. And so there are women and men who do this work and are very, very much deeply integrous sexual healers. And there are some who are sometimes and not other times. And the point is, and this is why sexual healers like to differentiate themselves from other workers in the field of sexuality, is that oftentimes in sex work, the boundaries are hazy, and it is very much up to, it's all in the dark, except in Nevada. Yeah, it can be difficult to discern what is sexual healing and what is not, and there are no standards.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Like, I know that I'm a big voice for honoring and respecting the prostitute or, the sex workers out there, because they're amazing, incredible beings that they have, they're amazing human beings, and, they're doing things with passion and desire. And I'm always saying we don't know anybody's life. Like, we don't know anything, what's happening. Like, we don't know anything. So, I always love to invite people to just stop the prejudice and like the judgment, and just honor and respect them. And I do agree with Michael that there are amazing practitioners out there. They do, they have sex with their client, but they, like Michael mentioned, the very integral way where that integrity is there. The intention is there. Like Michael shared at the beginning, what is not sexual healing is that aspect of, oh, I'm getting benefit from you and you're getting benefit from me. It's like that aspect of right? Like that integratification aspect of it. And I do appreciate and honor the sexual healers who do sexual work, that they have an integrity and they also have like a high standard, and also the intention is to really, really help the client. So
right, it's like if someone approaches sex work from the position of, how can I most deeply serve this client? There are many people who choose to have sex with their clients who do so with that intention. Yeah. And it's not simply to give them a one-off experience and move on to the next and just to get their bills paid. It's like they view it as a career, and it's something that energizes them, that they love doing. How can I open this man up more? How can I get him to connect with his body more deeply? How can I teach him to pleasure me in a way that he can take out of this encounter and bring to other people in his life? Yeah. And that's amazing work.
Yes, and like you mentioned before, we don't know, we really don't know what these individuals, men and women, come into the, looking for, what they're looking for. Like, some, like you said, some sex workers who do this with integrity, they have a great intention to really be there to help the person to heal at a deeper level. And sometimes even people who offer, even like, I'm not just putting the contrast of it, that even like, let's say us coaches, sometimes we don't go in sessions with integrity with our clients, and we just like, So it's like, it's all about intention. It's really, really, I love that. It's all about intention of the being a sacred prostitute. And just for everyone, again, if you follow me and you follow Michael, that we really love and adore and respect our sexual healers. So, our sex workers. So really, I invite everyone to respect that. So now, this is a question that really I'm so passionate to hear from you, the answer, because you have been very open about this, and really I have seen you writing a lot on different forums. So here we go. What are the code of ethic sexual healers should have with clients, even for those who offer sexual work as part of it?
So that's a very good question. And I would say a couple of things. First of all, I do not do professional hands-on sexual healing work. So let me just make that as a disclaimer out there.
Me too.
So you can take my answer for what it is, which is I'm an informed observer who has many friends who do this work and do it with integrity. I would say that rather than giving a comprehensive list of everything that needs to be involved, I'm going to point to a couple of things that I've noticed are sorely lacking. And the first of these is an accountability process. Actually, yeah, we'll start with the accountability process. So oftentimes within these containers, things come up that people engage with each other in ways that may or may not be in integrity. And in those cases, oftentimes people will have in the past ended up feeling violated, likely will in the future. And there's no way to call people on it. Because there's no structure or oversight in place for how this work is conducted. There's no one to hold them accountable. And as such, although there are many, many gems of people who are sexual healers and in the sexual healing community, there have also been people who are on their own, I mean, everyone is, but who are very much on their own learning and growth process. The world of Tantra can attract people who are in it for the egoic gratification of, I can have anyone that I want. Don't you want to sleep with me? I am a tantric god. I can ejaculate 5 times in a session. And then it's like, ooh, let me give me a piece of that. And then it's like, oh God, I get so activated and then dropped. And that can be really traumatic for a lot of people. There's people who go out there like tantric healers, and they're just like, getting like women off willy-nilly, just putting their hands on people. Don't care where that person is at in their personal journey. Don't ask the necessary questions, and therefore people get hurt. And there's no accountability. There's no one to take these people who are very powerful individuals, and they've developed a massive amount of skill and attunement and everything, but there's nobody to say, hey, you're causing harm. Yeah. Stop. So there's no accountability process. Huge problem. The second thing is a code of ethics or a code of conduct that is publicly stated and held across the board, and that basically will enable that accountability process. So oftentimes, I'm not going to name any names for organizations or whatever, but when I engaged, I had a lot of questions. There was a question, I went with a partner to an event, and there was a question of like, hey, is this facilitator who's been studying Tantra for 20 years, has a billion partners, is this person gonna try to sleep with my partner? Is that something that's gonna happen? Fear, that's, nobody should have to be comparing themselves to somebody who's worked in the field of conscious sexuality forever, and there's this ability that you develop when you do it for a long time to just open people up in a way that maybe they've never opened before, and it can be really destructive if there's no clarity and assurance for a first timer that they know what to expect, and they know how they're going to be engaged with, and they know what the rules are, and they can trust. So that code of ethics is an incredibly important piece. And I have yet to encounter an organization that does Tantra or sexual healing that really upfront nails those power dynamics in a code of conduct that will provide a container of absolute safety. And I've noticed that the responses, why doesn't that exist, is often like, well, if people get triggered, that's on them. Examine your own shadow. What are you afraid of? It's gaslighting. It's putting the responsibility for making sure that you're okay, onto the person who should be feeling most held. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these are things that I think need to be in place, and in that code of ethics, I think one thing that is incredibly crucial is to understand that when you engage with someone, particularly with hands-on work, though with any work really, there is the capability for transference. Yeah. So that is somebody opens you up, somebody helps you, assists you with your healing in some way, and this happens in psychology as well. And then all of a sudden you start to feel attachment with them. You start to feel this sense of like, oh, I'm so grateful. Like, you opened me up in this way that nobody has before. Let me fixate on you. And that is that is where the capability for harm comes in, when that person takes that and then uses that person to gratify their own needs. And so steps must be taken to avoid this transference. I do know one thing is a code of ethics that's stated at the beginning is really important. If you go and you give someone a yoni massage, for example, without making it clear what this is and what this is not, then and even if you do, there can still sometimes be that transference and attachment, right? So like what I know that some sexual healers do is they will actually, if they are doing hands-on genital work, they will actually put a blindfold on the person who is receiving the touch so that they do not form an anchor with the practitioner, and that it becomes all about their own bodily experience rather than the connection that they feel with the practitioner, which is, I think, an amazing way of dealing with the issue of transference with hands-on sexual work. Yeah. So I don't feel I'm qualified to give a full answer to this question, but I feel I've given the answer that I'm most qualified to give.
Well, I think that you have mentioned the very, very basic, and not just basic, but very fundamental aspect of it. So really, really appreciate that. So our next question is, can sexual healing not involve genital work, sexual, erotic, massage, or copulation? For those who don't know what copulation is having sex.
Yes, so absolutely. I mean, I do that. That's what I do on a daily basis. I work with men, and I hold a space for men to open up and to speak about their sexuality in a way that in their daily lives there is often not the space for. So many people, especially, well, so many people, I'm not going to say especially men, go around with all of these things that they just carry inside and they feel they can't speak about, because our society still is, in the United States at least, is predominantly sex negative. You can't talk about sex at work, you can't talk about it with your mom, it's not polite conversation. So it's so important to have these spaces in which they can be spoken about. And that's one way that you can engage with sexual healing without touch, is simply being that space holder for the conversation, the exploration. And the second way is to provide people with modalities or tools to use themselves at home to begin to engage with their sexuality in a new way. Yeah. So, for example, one thing that I do is called sexual self-mastery. And this is work that I do with Destin, and what it is a program that's designed for men to get them to connect with their own bodies by touching their bodies, and in what we call erotic self-exploration, to play with their arousal, to get themselves to know their arousal systems more deeply without a partner, and to bring themselves and to stay at those heightened levels of arousal, and to play with how long can they maintain those states of arousal without actually going over the edge? Eventually, to begin to use breath and sound and visualization and movement to fully get into their bodies, get into their experience, enhance their aliveness, and to eventually separate orgasm from ejaculation so they can reach heights of pleasure that they may not have imagined possible.
Yeah. And actually, this is the question that I personally love, because being in the sexual field for some years, at the beginning, going into navigating this whole field that could be very cloudy. It could be like it could be like, what? It's like, like I was sharing with another speaker, I have memories, and rememberings of ancient Egypt being like sexually prostitutes with energy, right? Like you can see I always remember the orgies and things, energetic orgies and all that stuff, which is fun. That's my thing. But and just navigating the whole thing of tantra and sexual healing work and what I was being called for, it took me years to actually get to the clarity that I do this work and I don't do touch genitals. Like, and I'm very clearly with, being specific, like, like the work that we do together with Dustin and all the other coaches that help sexuality, it is the process of preparing people in the sexual healing journey. It is actually sexual healing.
Yes.
I feel like some people, sometimes I feel like we get, it is being so confused that it has taken me personally as so long to even own it and say, yes, I do this work. I don't do the genitals, but I do this work because we do in the preparation so when somebody I'll call it the advanced part of it, when the emotions, they can master the emotions, they can master the sexuality, they can master all these other beautiful things, they can be fully ready. So there's no, for me personally, there's no that way of interfering with the interference with the therapist. Like, they're not attaching anything to the therapist because they already have shed a lot of the attachment that they have. They may still a little bit of it, but it's not as profound like at the beginning of it. So it is why I love this question, because it really put all of us who do this work around sexuality in preparation stages, and on it. That on it that this is the beginning, right? On some levels. So okay, so we got that. And the next question is, do you feel clients who are looking for sexual healing from sexual trauma enroll into a process and journey of preparation and purging before experiencing sexual touch from a qualified practitioner? I know I'm repeating many questions, but
it's different. So, first of all, if you are looking to go into your sexual trauma, first of all, congratulations. The vast majority of people out there who have sexual trauma, sadly, will likely never intentionally explore it. There are people who go their entire lives leading. If you say they have blocks that keep them here, they just work within that, and their capacity for expression and for experience will remain hampered by that trauma unless it's intentionally addressed for the rest of their lives. There are couples who simply don't have sex, even though there's deep love there, because they are afraid of being triggered and opening that Pandora's box. So congratulations. And I would say that if you do decide to go in this journey, preparing yourself in a great number of ways is advised. Your self-care is important. It's incredibly important to pay attention to your energy, your diet, your exercise. Everything during this healing journey is important to address and to look at. I wouldn't necessarily recommend any one particular method of preparation, but embark on it with the gravitas that it deserves, so to speak, and find yourself a guide that you really trust, or several, ideally several. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and that leads us to the next two questions, which be, how can we tell who is a qualified practitioner, and where can we find them?
I wish I had a better answer for this. The short answer is you can't know for sure. And the other thing is that even if there were a licensing authority, you still couldn't know for sure. There's plenty of people who are board certified physicians who are quacks. There's plenty of psychologists who, practice out of integrity. There's plenty of lawyers who quite frankly shouldn't be practicing law. And in those cases, and in all cases, use your discernment. And that means using all the tools that are available at your disposal. Using your gut, trust your gut. If you don't feel it's right, don't do it. If you have any questions, don't do it. If you are not 100% yes to something, don't do it. The other tool that you have at your disposal is asking around. Talk with not just one person, but a lot of people. Ask for references. If there's an individual that a lot of people end up referring you to for your particular form of trauma, chances are that is going to be someone to speak with. Vet people. And I think that the conversation that's happening now surrounding all of these people in the sexual healing community either being called out or there just being conversations about this is a great sign. Means that the community is slowly self-regulating and coming into deeper integrity. I have great hope for this process in the future, that the field will become ever safer for people for actually the huge and growing number of people who are seeking this work. I'd say that there's more information and more light awareness being shed on this than there ever has been before, and more conversations are happening now than have ever happened in the past. In the past, I have encountered the sort of whenever a discussion of integrity or something was brought up there from some people in the community, there's always just this, never, it's on them, we don't talk about it. And I believe that people in the sexual healing community don't just need to be integrity, they need to be models of integrity, and they need to speak about it. And they need to be open to being challenged and having public discussions, not only about how great orgasms are, not only about how wonderful sex can be as marketing language and all this crap. They need to be having these difficult conversations publicly. And here's one way you can tell. If they don't, and they're not, question why.
I love that. I love that. Actually, very powerful. Like, before you start working with anyone, actually study them, listen to them, see what their perspective, their philosophy, what they actually about. Are they actually speaking the truth, or there's contradiction to what they say? And sometimes one of the biggest things that I look into is are they contradicting themselves? Because sometimes we do contradict ourselves, and when we get questioned by the contradiction, how do we react? And again, we get offended or not, how it is. So really, really important to have these open, vulnerable conversations and really ask questions. I love ask questions because it's delicious.
Yeah, difficult conversations are sexy. I love them.
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you. So for anyone who has been listening today and watching us today live, if they resonate with anything that you say, how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you?
Well, first of all, you can friend me on Facebook. I'm very open to that. Michael Author. And the other thing is, if you're wondering about the work that I do, you can head to evolvedmasculine.com. And it shows the work that I do with Dustin and many of the programs and ways to engage that are available to you. We do work surrounding empowerment and sexual self-mastery, as well as for people who wish to step into doing this work and being coaches of men themselves.
Yeah, and you guys only work with men, right?
Except with our Evolved Masculine Leadership Program.
Yes.
Our coaches training program, we will train women to work with men. But for the most part, our work is with men.
Yay. I love your work, guys. I really appreciate the Vol Masculine. I love, and I hope to see Destin in our interview too. And I appreciate every single one of you guys. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate
Thank you, Lucia.
Love you, and have a great, fantastic rest of the day.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.